transfer portal opened last Friday, and all eyes, obviously so, have been on the quarterback position out of the SEC. Another big news dropped today as former South Florida coach Alex Golesh goes to Auburn, and his quarterback follows him. This is Byrum Brown, commits to the Auburn Tigers, one of the top-rated quarterbacks in the country in the transfer portal this past season, and now headed to the Plains as expected. Welcome to Southeast Sports Plus. I'm Gerhard Mathangani, joined by Patrick Walsh. And Patrick, this is one of those things where it felt like when Alex Golesh came to Auburn, it felt like he had a plan for what he wanted to do offensively. But the quarterback situation was always going to be a little bit interesting because of already what they had. You saw something out of Deuce Knight. You knew Jackson Arnold was going. You also knew that Ashton Daniels was going. So this kind of felt like everybody knew the Byrum Brown move was coming. How does it feel now that it's official?
I think when he was hired as head coach, meaning Alex Golesh, there were only two options in mind for me of who was going to be the quarterback this upcoming year for the Auburn Tigers. It was either going to be Deuce Knight, and he was going to roll with Deuce after being, that five-star recruit out of high school over in Lucedale, Mississippi, or he was just going to bring Byrum Brown over from USF, and it was the latter two. And I basically knew that this was going to happen right when Deuce Knight officially entered the transfer portal yesterday. And honestly, I think this is a great get for Alex Golesh. Obviously, he coached him this year, and he's coached him in the last few years.
Right.
And, some people might take a look at that USF record and be like, really, this guy really isn't that much special. But as you and I both know, USF was a dumpster fire before Alex.
Numbers for this past season, that's nearly 500 yards per game. And some people can roll their eyes about the competition that he played. But keep in mind, this is the same quarterback that beat Florida.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people thought that they could beat Miami because that was that part of the year. But in that Miami game, he had another solid game there as well. And we've seen Miami's defense take them all the way to the college football playoff semifinal. So this is a situation with Alex Golesh where he gets a guy now going into his first season that he really trusts as QB1 going into it. How much of a leg up does that give Auburn and Auburn fans? Because it doesn't feel the same. I know they've had three different quarterbacks in 3 different years.
Right.
All transfer portal guys. It's kind of the new age of college football.
It's just the way it is, honestly.
With obviously Peyton Thorne coming in from Michigan State, Jackson Arnold coming in from Oklahoma. This feels more solidified than the other two. The other two felt like not necessarily shaky ground, but the other two felt a little bit more like you're rolling the dice and hoping that you land on the number that you want to land on.
Yeah, and I think that was especially apparent with once Jackson Arnold came from Oklahoma, because everyone, when you go SEC to SEC, your fan base typically already knows what you're going to get, because the thing about the SEC is you're so tuned into these other teams. I mean, even some of the teams that are new, like Texas and Oklahoma, and especially since Jackson Arnold did end up beating Alabama, some Auburn fans were like, hey, maybe we can get him over to the Plains and have a good year. But, I think for some fans, they're going to look at this, Byrum Brown coming to Auburn, and be like, oh my goodness, here we go. It's Jackson Arnold 2.0. But honestly, I think you have to, first of all, you have to give him a chance, because he hasn't had a chance. He spent his entire career at USF and then ended up following his coach, who left USF to go to Auburn. I think you have to give him a chance. And Byrum Brown, I've watched some of the tape on him. I watched that Florida game. I think I actually picked USF. If we go way back to September, I think I actually picked USF to cover the spread in that game. This is a great quarterback, a great get. I think personally his game's gonna translate to the SEC, because as we just talked about yesterday on the show, Trinidad Chambliss, his game translated from Division II up to the SEC level, and it's just it brings up my point again yesterday of this is what we're going to see.
Also kind of dispels some of the narrative that you have to be able to do it at the SEC level or the Power 4 level, because yes, Fernando Mendoza was at a Power 4 school. However, he wasn't at necessarily the most power-rich program, and we've seen different cases of this. Ahmad Hardy led the SEC in rushing. Well, the school he was in previously was in the Sun Belt, and so we've seen the group of 5 guys go on to the Power 4 level and really shine.
Right.
Does it automatically mean he's going to be in New York next year for the Heisman Trophy? Not necessarily, but his track record does say he at least has a chance there with Alex Golesh and with his guys there. Now, from a Alex Golesh and Auburn perspective here, by doing this, are you kind of boxing yourself in and shutting the door because you don't have a quarterback competition and really kind of riding the hopes that he stays healthy all year? Because I think that was kind of the saving grace with Auburn last year, because yes, you do have a backup quarterback in Deuce Knight. Yeah, he's a freshman, but he can develop. I think that with Alex Golesh, this can be the first piece, but you still have to find a second piece.
Well, and I think for Alex Golesh, right now, if you look at who Auburn has gotten out of the portal, it's the two guys that Alex Golesh just had competing for the spot this past year. And I would expect Auburn to potentially go and get maybe like a backup. I know the Appalachian State guy. I don't remember exactly what school he went to, but I forgot too. He signed. Yeah, I think it was SEC, but he's going to be a backup. I think it's Mississippi State. Now that I think about it, but another thing, going off my point from earlier, I think fit is also a major thing that you have to take into consideration. And I think when you bring up Fernando Mendoza, he fits into what Curt Cignetti and that Indiana offense wants to be so well.
Right.
And you don't really have to worry about the fit here because Golesh and Byrum Brown just led USF. And I think if they had just a little bit of a better defense, and that's going to be the one thing that probably kept USF out of the CFP this year, because they had the third best offense in the entirety of FBS.
That's right.
But now you don't really have to worry about the defense as much because you're able to retain DJ Durkin, and DJ ended up leading Auburn to one of the best defenses in the SEC when he was solely the defensive coordinator. So I think that's the one thing that you got to be worried about with Auburn this season, with Alex Golesh having such a good offensive pedigree. But I would expect them to still have a really good defense, even though there's going to be a lot of departures.
Yeah, I think even just from a scheme perspective, they'll have a much better defense than what South Florida put on the field last year. But to your point, I just had to see the fact that in their 3 losses, they lost to Miami, who's still in the college football playoff as one of the top 4 teams. Outside of that Miami game, you finished 11-1, and now the season looks a lot different there on paper. So I do think that will quell a lot of concerns if Auburn fans do have those concerns, or SEC football fans have those concerns about a G5 guy coming to the Power 5, Power 4 level with him going in. How soon do you expect this to click? Do you expect it to click kind of automatically? Do we see those kind of fireworks coming in those first 4 or 5 games of the season because he is going to be on the Plains? There's not 2 transfer portal windows. It's that 1 transfer portal window. So he'll be on the Plains. He'll be with Golesh for the 8 months leading up to the college football season.
Yeah, I think it will, but we just need to see how the rest of this portal plays out, because right now when you look at that wide receiver room and what it was last year, I mean, it's just absolutely decimated. Cam Coleman, he's flirting with Alabama. I think he takes a visit to Tuscaloosa tomorrow, which, Auburn fans definitely don't want to hear. Perry Thompson just committed to Minnesota. We'll talk about that later in the show. That one kind of shocked me as I was going to bed last night.
Right.
Eric Singleton obviously declared for the draft, and then Malcolm Simmons is also in the portal alongside Horatio Fields. So, I mean, this wide receiver room is going to be completely different this next season. I don't expect Cam Coleman to come back. Because I know you can go into the portal and then be like, actually, I changed my mind. I'm just going to go back. I think the Oklahoma State guy, one of the linemen went into the portal and
then immediately came back out.
He scheduled a visit with his old school. So, I mean, I don't know. Today's world is crazy. I think there's over 5,000 players in the portal right now.
The last number I saw was like 4,500.
How do you gauge talent?
I have no clue.
How do you make sure you're getting the right guy?
I just think at this point now, when it comes to the transfer portal, I know this is a larger conversation, but I think when you get it in a situation where you have this many players, you just almost have to tier them. You can't necessarily rank them. You have to tier them, and then tier them for not only their talent level, but then also tier them for the money that they're asking for.
Yeah.
And then almost have to do a dollar cost average with all these guys. So like, hey, we consider this guy this tier asking for this money. Does this work with our budget, or does this work with what we want to do NIL wise? And it almost it feels a lot like me, like you have to do a little bit more shopping and not necessarily more player for player adjusting for the talent you're getting, because it does seem to me like it's nowadays where you have 17 different players at a certain tier, and you're just going to pick the one that has the best value to what you have to do as far as, and I hate even using these words, but you kind of have to your salary cap, to what you can offer from a
the running back position, because it's such a volatile position in football, because one guy can have a great year one year and then the next kind of be a dud, and their lifespans in the NFL specifically are so short. But Pete Golding and company don't have to worry about finding another running back in the portal, because Kewan Lacy and Ole Miss agreed to a deal for the 2026 return of Lacy. I don't know if the final offer was made public. I know that there was a reported offer of about $1.8 million for him to return, but this is a huge get. And let me tell you what, Pete Golding is cooking right now, because
he is.
Obviously he's still waiting to hear on Trinidad Chambliss. We don't know about that. They're hoping to hear before Thursday's Fiesta Bowl. And now you're able to get Kewan Lacy back. I don't think you would expect to get Harrison Wallace, your leading wide receiver, back. I think he's going to go to the NFL draft. But this is just such a win. And honestly, here's the thing. I don't even care if this is an overpay, because he's a guy that you just need to keep in Oxford, and 100%. You could not let him leave for Baton Rouge. And right now it seems like Pete Golding is outdueling the portal king, because when you look at some of the recruits that LSU has signed out of the portal, they don't really stack up as well as some of these Ole Miss signees. And I mean, Ole Miss is starting to pluck some of the players. Not only have both of these schools started plucking coaches from each other's school, they're starting to pick off some of these players that entered the portal from LSU.
And I think that this new transfer portal window, one of the things I really did not think about, but it's coming into fruition now, is just how much, coaches might be at a disadvantage as far as their game planning for their next game and not able to hit the portal as much. So Pete Golding and his staff might not be able to have as much portal time. The good thing, though, is that the more games you win, the more attractive you become. And I wonder how much of this is just the momentum that Ole Miss has created post Lane Kiffin. And just like you have said, now you don't have to be at LSU to compete for a national championship and now be one of the top four teams. And I wonder if that pure momentum is really helping Pete Golding, because he has been on a run, not only the guys he's retaining, but the guys he's getting from elsewhere.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at some of these are just some of the portal acquisitions that he has gotten. Obviously, the shark emoji has been synonymous with Pete Golding ever since he took over. But Chris Jones out of Southern Miss, he is a great talent over there at linebacker. He's going to be huge for them. And then one of the big ones was Jaheim Otis. And you and I talked about this yesterday. Pete Golding obviously coached him at Alabama, so he was able to lure him away from Colorado to join Pete Golding in Oxford. And then this name you have to pay attention to next year, Jay Crawford. This dude is so good at quarterback. And this was the one that honestly was like, for me and me personally, I was like, man, Pete Golding, he's got a guy right here. And that defense is not going to take a step back. And then, as I mentioned, plucking the guys from LSU, Carius Kearney, he's an offensive tackle. He's going to be an interior offensive tackle.
Right.
I think there's a lot to be desired with him, but the framework is there, and I think good coaching will help him reach his potential here next year.
And I think that being able to have that stabilization there at Ole Miss with Golding, and just knowing that, hey, you will be coached well once you come to Oxford, is a huge thing for him. And like you said, it'll help round out his talent, because it feels like he's there. Cam Coleman and Deuce Knight came out. That was the biggest blow for Auburn, to leave Auburn and go to the transfer portal. Of course, Cam Coleman became the number one player, and I think Deuce Knight a little bit after that. But Jay Crawford is a stud for that team, and helps solidify what Pete Golding wants. What he wants is a good physical defense that can not only attack the ball, not only attack the passer, but also play well on the outside. Right. And he's been able to do a really good job with that.
The one big thing this year was got to stop the run. That's been the weakness for Ole Miss. I think Jaheim Otis will be able to be a nice run stopper here. But one more thing on Ole Miss before we head to break. One thing to keep an eye on. I know Deuce Knight is sort of linked to join the Ole Miss Rebels next year. I'd be interested to see if Trinidad Chambliss were to return next year, if Deuce Knight were to go to Ole Miss, because I think one of the main things is he wants to play right away. He believes, his 5-star rating coming out of high school warrants him being able to play right away.
Or and he has a good tape.
Maybe Lane Kiffin is like, hey, Ole Miss doesn't want you. You're in-state school. They don't want you. They want to go with Trinidad. Why don't you come down here to the Bayou?
It could be really interesting there for Deuce Knight, because I know it's a couple of games, but in the one game he started in,
looked good.
He's got the tape.
It was Mercer, but he still looked good.
Right. So I think 6 touchdowns in the game, 4 rushing, 2 passing in that matchup. So the quarterback shuffling will be interesting. As of right now, we know Byrum Brown is headed to Auburn. He'll be an Auburn Tiger going into next year.